Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have Whale Captain, a visually unique shoot 'em up. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Tyrannosaurus Games, Whale Captain released via iOS in March of 2024. Then in April of 2024, it released for the PC via Steam, and that's the version we're looking at today, specifically on a Steam Deck, which this game plays very well on, so you don't have to worry about any compatibility issues. With all that said, I would say at best, this is a mediocre shoot 'em up, but what sets it apart and makes it worth your time to look at is just that whole bizarre visual feel that this game has. It also has a low price point, so there's not much of a barrier to entry with this title either. With all that said, let's dive into the game. You can see if it's something that would be interesting to you. Here we find ourselves at the main menu. There's really not a whole lot here, it just says press to begin. But we can also open the options. Doing so brings down these various options, and you can kind of see the mobile influence here, as you've got these buttons that aren't very descriptive. So the clock is your difficulty, the thumbs up is sensitivity, you've got frames, you also have the sound volume as well as the music volume. Starting the game, we begin Act 1. As far as the gameplay is concerned, this is a horizontal scroller, but we don't have the full range of the screen. We can move this far back, and you can move about 60% of the way forward on the screen. The shot is an auto shot, but it does have this weird issue, where if you're not actually holding a button down, sometimes it will slow down or even stop firing for a time, which can be a bit problematic. In addition to our movement, we have three specials that are in the bottom right there. You start off with one by default, however that one you start out with is not useful. So it's random depending on your start, and in this case we got the rainbow, which, well, we can have a beautiful rainbow fill the back of the screen, but it doesn't really do anything other than just look pretty. There is also a button for focus movement. On a Steam Deck, that's your left trigger. If you hold that down, you can slow down your movement, allowing you to more easily dodge through enemy shots in tight situations. One thing to note, the ship does have quite a large hitbox, so that can be quite useful. There are also some power-ups like the coffee there, which in addition to having coffee pour from the top of the screen, greatly increases our movement speed and our shot speed. Both can be useful, but sometimes you'd want to slow that down, and the focus movement still works in that situation. So that's one of the biggest ways that we can get through the stages, is by collecting the treasure chests that we have. We can get all sorts of different power-ups from those. They're timed and don't last all that long, but they can get us out of a jam. So as far as the stages are concerned, the game has a total of 6 different stages, or 6 acts, and the order will always be randomized. So there's some procedural generation going on with our enemy waves, as you would have your easier versions, and then the later you encounter the stage, the harder they get. There's this neat little hook here. If we pick up that sushi, there are several different food types, and they basically behave like a mushroom in Mario. It increases our size, gives us an extra hit, and we also, well, our shots are larger. It's hard to tell if they're actually dealing more damage or not. I'd like to think they are. So as far as the hits themselves are concerned, as we're dealing damage to enemies, you can see if they're not taken out with one hit, they'll have hearts appear above the enemies as we deal damage. We ourselves have 3 hearts in the top left for 3 hits. It is possible to recover health at a couple points in the stage, as well as get additional hearts. We've been collecting gold coins. If you collect 100 gold coins, you'll get an additional life. And collecting rainbow coins gives you extra benefits as well. We've collected one of those so far. And another way we can collect them is with this portion here. So in all of the stages are broken up into basically 3 sections. Your phase 1, your intermission, which is a mini game, which we're doing this interesting basketball-like one, and then a phase 2, which ends with your boss fight. So that's the end of the mini game. We're graded on our performance. In this case, we got a silver, so that's enough for another rainbow coin and a gold coin. That is one area you can potentially recover health if you perform well enough, so you do want to do well at the mini games, but that will just depend on which one you've encountered. Even with how much I've already played this, I still am finding mini games that I haven't seen before. So the visual style is definitely the thing that drew me the most to this title. The enemies, the way that the animation, this stage in particular, has that cutout animation style, kind of similar to what Monty Python did with their old show back in the day. But there's also other visual styles that are present as well. Some of the other stages where we have kind of a video game pixelated style. There's one that's sepia that kind of left a sour taste in my mouth the first time I actually saw it. It was the very first stage I drew was the sepia one, so it was really hard to tell what was even going on. But just all those general bizarreness, the enemies that we get, both the normal bosses, the mini bosses like this angelfish here, like everything this game has from a visual standpoint, I just want to see more. I just kind of wish that the gameplay itself was a bit more solid. Even with some of the options that you have, playing it with a controller like the Steam Deck, it just still feels there's some clunkiness, and as you get further into the gameplay, the way that it ramps up the difficulty by just throwing more at you, you can just feel a little bit overwhelming. There is its option for scaling the difficulty, which I mentioned when we were talking about the options, and the way it does that is it scales the speed of the game. So you start off with the option or the game set at full 1 speed. So if you wanted to decrease the difficulty, you decrease the speed. So right now we're running at 0.8. You can go as low as 0.5. One big problem with 0.5, the game is running at half speed, and already it takes a while to get through, even at full speed, one stage. So cut it down to half, and you're going to take a long time to get through all 6 stages. So I don't necessarily think that was the greatest way to scale the difficulty. I wish they'd settled on a different method. And, well, the auto fire, just that weird glitch that I mentioned at the beginning where sometimes it doesn't always fire correctly when you're not holding any buttons, is bizarre. I kind of wish there was the option just to turn on a button for the auto fire rather than having just that weird, like, the game is just pausing there shot wise, and I'm not 100% sure why it does that. Alright, we find ourselves at the end of the stage. All the rainbow coins I've collected are turned into these various power-up choices. I can choose one, so let's go with this laser beam. So now that laser beam is in our bottom right specials, and it will come in quite handy against our boss here, this dragon. Once again, I just love the visual style here. The shadows behind the enemies, the fact that they just look like 2D paper cutouts. So that's our laser beam. It doesn't last very long, but the meter will fill up. So these colorful orbs that I've been collecting will accelerate the speed of the recovery for your special weapons in the bottom. They're very important that way. The boss fights themselves can be multi-stage, especially if you encounter the bosses later in the gameplay. Here our dragon has left the field, and we have to dodge through these fireballs and destroy these crates. And basically, that's what we have here for Well Captain. So as far as the game is concerned, I love the visual style. I think it's great, and I want to go and see everything the game has to offer. I just wish that some of the systems weren't quite as clunky. Maybe a smaller hitbox on the ship. Well, let's get to talking about our plus and minus flavors after what we're doing here. So when you complete a stage, you have the choice of 3 specials that are on the top, and then you can choose which one of your current specials you want to assign it to. So we'll assign it here. This is a biplane option flown by a zebra and a giraffe. And then here you could potentially stop and come back to it later, or we can just begin Act 2. So as far as the minus flavors are concerned, just that auto fire issue is just like really, really bizarre. I don't know why we've got like a problem there where it just sometimes stops firing. Then there's the large hitbox issue. I do love the power-ups where we get that food and ultimately become a bigger ship. But like we already have a large hitbox as is, so for that one it makes it even harder to deal or to avoid the damage, even if it's great having that extra protection. And then the lack of explanation for what anything does in the options menu and no real tutorial for even your controls is a bit disappointing. If you were to read the Steam description, that does have all the various extra controls that you would need to learn about, as well as descriptions of the options in the settings menu, but that just seems a bit unnecessary. But on the plus flavor, I love the visual design the game has. And all these bizarre specials, like when you get some from the crew on the ship, like that Sakura Petal Blast that we got. There's also those a well that you can summon, some weird octopus tentacles. This just a whole bunch of bizarre like attacks and visual features that this game has. It adds a lot of character to it, and if the overall gameplay was more solid than it was, then this one would be an easy recommend. As is, I think it's an oddity that might be worth your time to check out, just if you want to see the weirdness that is Well Captain. So ultimately, that's my biggest plus flavor for it, is just that like bizarre, weird feel that the game has and captures. For me at least, makes it worth my time to devote a bit of exploration to it. But if you're looking for a more solid shoot 'em up experience, then you're probably better off looking elsewhere. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful week yourself, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.